Plant Hunter Guy podcast.
Welcome to the next episode of the Plant Hunter Guy podcast. I'm really excited to be joined by Alex Harvey from Alex Harvey Estate Agents. Alex, thanks so much for coming in.
My pleasure.
Do you mind telling us a bit about yourself and your business?
Yeah, of course, yeah. So I've been in the wonderful world of estate agency for nearly 29 years.
Wow.
We designed our business back in June 2018. We felt there was a need to do things better. So we created a business on a much smaller scale to give the kind of support that I think our buyers and our sellers needed.
Yeah, absolutely. And so did you had been in the industry before that, and then
Absolutely.
you decided to go on your own. It's always quite a big leap of faith, isn't it? So what made you think, I'm ready to do it and go out on your own?
A lot of it was frustration. I was running a really good brand in Horsham.
Yeah.
Great company, but I was seeing that people didn't have enough time to deliver good service. So I felt I was ready. It's obviously a very daunting thing to do.
Absolutely.
But with the amazing support of my wife Sarah, we just knew that I could do it. And then COVID hit, so it was a really, really crazy time. But again, it gave us more time to think, more time to perfect the business.
Yeah, it's amazing. I work with Sophie here too, so I know we think there's way more benefit from it, but working together is quite a thing. But for us, generally, it's much better benefit, but it's definitely a challenge at times. It makes it, there's those kind of, we find here, I have to make sure we're really clear on delegation and who's doing which task and stuff, but we've got it, but it's a thing. Cool, so estate agent for life is something I've kind of thrown at you, this idea that someone stays with you throughout your sort of journey, I suppose. Is that a kind of important part of
Definitely.
your business?
Yeah. So we originally started the business working with an American company, and that's been their philosophy since the word go.
Okay.
But it was always something that was quite important to me anyway, because when I started my agency career in 1997, there was a particular couple whose house I sold whilst they still had young kids. And then about a year into us starting our business, I then sold that young daughter's house, who now she's married, she's had children, and I think that part of the business is really, really important.
Yeah.
But again, it's just staying in contact with people, making sure that we're there as a resource as well.
Yeah, it's really important, because it's, as I say, it feels more like an American value. Is that where it came from, that idea?
Yeah, but
it's now very embedded in the UK, I assume, or?
Well, I think some people would like to say that it's something that they do deliver, but it's a big commitment. And to stay in touch, but meaningfully stay in touch, I think that's really the important thing, because I think everyone needs to understand that you are there for them, and when they've got to make critical decisions in terms of how they extend their houses, what they do in their gardens, what they do to enhance the value of their properties, they need someone who they can rely on, who maybe knows the house anyway from old.
Yeah.
There's one particular family that we've sold 3 houses for over the last 15 years.
Wow.
And their last house, they actually designed and built. And it was lovely for us to see, again, that journey, and then also for us to then sell that house for them. It's something that we've taken immense pride in as well.
Yeah, I know that through being family friends, but also I bought my house from you, and you've helped my parents too, and various other things along the journey, but we kept in touch throughout the years, and that's really important. So if I need advice from you, you always pick up the phone. So you're right, it's a big commitment for me to do that. Is there any sort of system you put in place to do it, or do you just use memory, or do you have IT to help you to know I've got to call this person this time? Is it done very much on gut?
Anyone that knows me knows that I'm not as organised as I think I am. I think the reality is this, I do as best I can when I have a few spare moments. I do think, well, who haven't I spoken to for a while? Get my phone out. The interesting thing about how I've done business over the last sort of 10 or so years, I've saved every single person's number that I've spoken to.
Yeah.
And that really helps, because very often when people need our assistance in terms of providing additional services or contacts, we can then go back. So I think, again, it goes back to that font of knowledge example of us just always adding value to them.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's true, I can feel that. So I think there's a sort of definitely an idea that estate agents are very salesy. There's I think a lot of people would say that. You don't come across that to me at all, and it's very much about advice and knowledge. So you sort of said you do things differently. How would you've said a few of those things. What else do you do differently, and what have you focused on in that in terms of, I suppose, both the buying and the selling process?
Yeah. Well, it's always the long term. It's always about making sure that the advice that's given to either a buyer or a seller allows them to get to where they want to be, because very often you can't shortcut the process. And a lot of estate agents will consider there's a faster route, but very often it's not the right route.
Yeah.
For an example, selling houses this time of year with a property that's got the most gorgeous garden,
Yeah.
if you can't paint that picture for the buyer immediately, they're not going to recognise the quality of the workmanship in the garden.
Yeah, absolutely. And is there, that sort of brings us on seasonal factors. How big are seasonal factors in terms of the process?
So they used to be huge,
Yeah.
but I think the world's changed an awful lot. I would say these days, a lot of it depends on the individual's own circumstances, because houses have been taking a lot longer to sell.
Yeah.
So I don't think everyone's got that luxury of sort of waiting for that right absolute optimum. But also it depends, because not everyone sells a house for exciting reasons of a promotion or inheritance. There will be people that need to sell their houses just because there's a level of urgency within the family.
Yeah.
But we tend to find that if we understand what the brief is, property will sell 12 months a year.
Yeah, understood. So it's a lot to do with the person selling as well, assuming what their desires are and what their thoughts are on the market. So. Okay, and so we're obviously now in early spring, February. It's rained constantly. Does that have a big impact on, on things?
It's definitely slowed the market down for the start of this year.
Yeah.
A friend of mine was telling me statistically we've had more rain this year than we've had for over 100 years.
Wow, good sign.
Which is quite something. But I hope that's good for the gardens in terms
It
of
will.
them getting good soaking. But I think the market is slightly behind. We're maybe 4 to 6 weeks behind where we'd like to be.
Yeah.
But there are definitely green shoots.
Yeah, good. Yeah, and there's also then goes on to geographical. So I'm assuming there are pockets, right, in the UK, and we, being in the southeast, I'm assuming we're one of those.
Yep.
Is it
Yep.
very different depending on where you live? I suppose London as well must react differently to even southeast. Is that the case?
Yeah, well, there's been fewer people coming out of London recently because the home working elements may be reduced somewhat. But we do find that a lot of our buyers will move within about a 5 to 10 mile radius.
Yeah.
But again, it will always depend on buyer circumstances.
Yeah, understood. And in terms of, like, I suppose going a bit bigger picture, so you talked about COVID, you've been through all of that too. How's that period in terms of your business? How did that affect things?
COVID was very difficult, but it gave us an opportunity to learn.
Yeah.
And we did a lot of problem solving. We learned an awful lot about how to be more efficient.
Yeah.
So going forward, I think it's put us in good stead.
Yeah, and you build on those foundations, don't you, in terms of any business? It's like, because we decided to then close our gates, and we went by appointment, because essentially that's how we ran during COVID.
Yeah.
So it has massively changed our business. But again, very difficult, but a lot of really good learnings from it we found.
Yeah.
So it sounds like the same sort of thing. And going into the future, we've just had an interest rate check, and they've just held it. Is that correct?
Indeed, yeah.
So I read quite a bit around it, and they're saying that there's a potential they might drop it in the future. They're seeing a drop might happen, but they can't confirm it.
Yeah, so it's all linked to inflation, Guy. But what I would say, looking at the industry experts, looking at the financial markets, if we can curb inflation, then there's a very, very good likelihood that we'll have a couple of interest rate drops. So we could possibly see a base rate around 3.25.
Yeah.
Historically, that's given a very, very high level of confidence in the market. It's very, very much helping first-time buyers.
Yeah.
So a great statistician that we know well called Simon Gates, I attended one of his sessions a couple of weeks ago, and he was saying first-time buyer rates have risen dramatically. So in previous years, they've maybe sat about 25%. They're now over 30%.
Wow.
So that's really very much changing the landscape as well.
That's a good thing as well. We want to get more first buyers. But assuming that means that will start invigorating the lower end of the market, right? And it brings it and then changes the things again. So the interest rate thing's obviously a fairly, I would assume, one of the biggest factors, is it, in terms of demand?
Yeah.
So that's quite a big driver for you.
Absolutely, which is good news.
I wonder whether we're going to see zero again. Do you think we'll ever see something like that, or what's your thoughts?
It's highly unlikely.
Yeah.
It would take an awful lot
Yeah.
to actually come down that low.
Yeah, agreed. And maybe it's not also a great thing. It's probably under 3, around that area is good.
Yeah.
Property values. So do you do the valuations yourself, or do you have someone in your team that does that?
I do, yep. So I do the majority of the valuing. My associate Sam does quite a lot as well.
Yeah.
But yeah, values this year, I think they're going to be quite interesting.
Yeah.
We're not expecting any drastic changes, perhaps 2, maybe 4% growth. But we have seen quite a correction from last year.
Yeah.
So I think it'd be quite steady this year.
So when someone gives you, calls you up, says, can you come around and look? Are there any sort of properties where you say we're not going to do that? It's maybe not in our area, or do you say yes to everything? Or?
There's lots of factors. We are quite selective with the work that we do because we want to serve good people. We want to make sure that we're selling properties that we know we can sell.
Yeah.
So we, as a business, took a decision not to sell leasehold properties, which was a personal one to us, but it means that we've got more time to serve the clients that we've already got and the clients that need our help. But again, we know our niche market. We know we sit in a particular part of the market where we know the market well, we know our buyers well.
And do you have any sort of, I suppose, in terms of geography, do you have aspirations to sort of grow out, or based on what you said, it sounds like you're very specific and want to be specialists in that area?
I think we tend to be hyper-local. We will go slightly further afield when needed because we get a lot of our business through recommendation. So there will be times when we have to go that little bit further. But because of how we sit in the market, we have a business model that's geared around certain types of properties. Because also that helps us value them more accurately because we've got that previous knowledge of other properties that have sold. Yeah,
and that I love hyper-local. We're definitely not that. I mean, we try and work all over the country, but we have an audience definitely that is local. So being hyper-local, I assume that also helps you when it comes down to valuing and having a network of people that you can talk to about when you're trying to sell something.
Absolutely,
so that comes. So you've walked. So then you're in the house and you're looking around. How do you even begin to value something? What tools do you use? Obviously experience, but is there any tools that you use?
There's many. I think 90% of it is gut feel. We can look at market data, we can look at properties that have sold before recently, but the challenge is a lot of properties we sell are old, they might be grade 2 listed. We've sold one of the oldest houses in West Sussex twice now.
Wow.
It was built 1296.
Incredible.
So you can't sort of compare that to a couple of others in the road because there's no such thing. But when it comes to the newer properties, there's lots and lots of data available. But I think the other thing to mention is that it's not just about valuing what the market's doing. The greatest skill we have is finding the right buyer who is prepared to pay more. Because there is a difference between market value and what a buyer will pay.
Absolutely.
And to the right type of buyer, it's not uncommon that they may pay 5-10% more because the thing about property is it's a very emotive transaction. And to the right buyer that says, well, that's exactly what we've been looking for the last 20 years, they are more likely to pay more money. Yeah,
absolutely. If it's one of those purchases where it might be you're seeing as your last big purchase essentially, and you're going to live there for years,
absolutely.
Then ultimately getting that right and finding the right one is. I always find it incredible that you're putting your house on the market and you've got to do it at the perfect time, knowing that the house is going to come up that you want. It is a challenge, isn't it? I suppose,
The timing bit's really difficult, but I also think if we understand the buyer, and this is where I think we have always excelled, we've always understood why people want things. There have been many scenarios where we've helped family members move together, and again, they're more likely to value the area more if they have a family member that lives close by.
So it's just getting that picture. And
absolutely.
I was going to ask you about sort of selling, so obviously our business is all about growing and selling plants. So we spend a lot of time with customers. It's very customer facing. So have you sort of had any sales training or any of that kind of stuff, or have you just very much gone on? I go on gut, I listen, I get people to tell me a story, and I understand what they want. Is there any other sort of, I suppose, sales things that you've taken along the way or learned that
I think
useful?
Sales is always a funny thing because if you work in an industry where you care about the outcome, it's not sales. It's listening to what people genuinely believe they need and what they want. And you need to understand that there is a difference between wants and needs. And very often we have looked at someone's wants and said, well, actually, we're not going to get all of those boxes ticked, but if we look at your needs, we'll get all of those boxes ticked, and then I suppose the compromise is somewhere in between.
Yeah, I'd say very similar, and when we're designing gardens we have to be very much thinking like that. The moment that you know, in the past I'd maybe hired a few people who, not just in this business but others, where possibly they've got a slightly more salesy stance, and unfortunately you then you're putting stuff in front of people that is not really what they're looking for. Of
course.
And you can see it going wrong really quickly, no matter how good you are at selling. So I'm in total agreement. It's really much more about the psychology, understanding what people want and what they're trying to achieve, basically.
I think people need to be guided, and there's a big difference between being sold to and guided, because people can make their own decisions. I think the thing about property buying and selling is, particularly from a buyer standpoint, if you are a family, you're going to have lots and lots of criteria, but the reality is that sometimes we've got to say, well, we can't find you that big garden, but we'll sell you this most amazing house that backs onto open space. And these are the things, again, if we get to know our buyers as well as we do, that's the bit that makes a massive difference. And I think trust is everything in any business, and I think that's something that certainly Sam and I spend a lot of time nurturing, and I think that does make a massive difference to the recommendations that we can make to people.
Absolutely. You mentioned about gardens, obviously that's a big, we tend to be introduced to the point where a customer is looking to improve their garden. They may have just purchased the house, or actually it might be that they're wanting to get it looking good for a sale. So if you're going in and you've done your evaluation, and maybe a customer says, you know, what do you think of the garden? How important is the garden to you when you're looking at the whole package?
It's really important. Again, we have to look at all the negatives of the property, and very often the garden will be perceived negative. For an example, the garden could be overlooked. So at that point, we might encourage the seller to just think about landscaping, think about improving that level of seclusion. But I think the biggest thing these days is the garden is the additional reception space of a property. And I think a lot of people haven't necessarily thought about that. They've just thought about it being outside space. But I think certainly going forward nowadays, more and more of our clients are investing in garden buildings. They're investing in beautiful porcelain terraces. And these are the things that when we've got the good weather, which I know is not as often as we'd like it, but when we've got that good weather, it makes a massive, massive difference to the house really coming alive into the garden.
Yeah, it's really important. So we're definitely noticing a trend with gardens becoming, the idea that they're another room has been around for a while, but it's the idea that they are essentially an entertainment space.
Absolutely.
So it's the outdoor kitchens, although we don't do hard landscaping, outdoor kitchens, garden buildings. Recently we just had Martin Baker from Baker's Buildings came on, and he does exactly that. So there, again, you think that's a good investment to have those things in your garden? Yeah,
so home offices are massive, because these days the home office, depending on the size, can often be a home office one side, a gym the other. But psychologically it's a massive, massive difference. So during COVID, my brother's work changed, and he built a beautiful home, what was going to be a sort of a gym in the garden, but it then became a home office. And I think psychologically people love the idea of leaving the house, walking down the garden, work is work, walking up the garden, it's back home again. And also, again, the amount of times, Guy, where we've found, in theory, a good property for a buyer, but they've said, look, we work from home, we need a study. And then we'll say, look, the garden's big enough, you can put a home office in, you can design it the way you want. And again, it's made them think differently, and then that's allowed them to say, do you know what, that property is now right for us.
I'm assuming because of those kind of connections, conversations you have, there must be an opportunity for you to, even when someone's purchased a house, like referring other partners, maybe it's a garden building company. Do you do stuff like that or not? Is it more sort of...
Yeah, so we don't necessarily know any particular garden building companies at the moment. We're finding out more and more, but our challenge has always been the people that we will refer, we will only refer them if either we've used them recently or our clients have.
Yeah, understood.
Because there can obviously be companies that aren't quite as good as the others.
Yeah, referrals are a big thing for me. I'm always asked, do you know a hard landscaper? And
Yes.
although we have lots of hard landscapers come and buy plants from us, it terrifies me because they're just reputationally.
Of course.
So yeah, I'm in agreement.
Yeah.
Well, I'll put you in touch with Martin because
Thank you.
he's fantastic. We do little projects together. So
Okay, good.
so yeah, and then you also mentioned then about this privacy. So I would say one of the biggest, like 90% of our customer base, you come in looking for privacy and screening.
Yeah.
So we tend to be, you've got a fence here. They're now building a garden building next door.
Yes.
Can we
Yeah.
screen it? So that's like a huge part of our, I would say, mostly that's what we do planting wise.
Right.
So our designs tend to be quite functional in the sense of we're trying to do that and then soften it inside. So again, that sounds like good use of someone's prior to selling because it helps with that. Cool. Okay, going into the house now, what would you say are like some maybe top 3 things that people should change in their house ready for a sale? Is there anything that stands out?
It's always about decluttering and allowing people to visualise themselves in the property. We have a home stager called Claire Hunting who is absolutely amazing and has on many occasions, we've sent her into a property that's been on the market with another company and she has just worked her magic. In some cases,
again, home stager?
A home stager,
yeah. Okay.
Because again, buyers are funny creatures. The emotive buyers, they very often can't see past things.
Yeah.
Sometimes we do a viewing and someone says, I don't like their sofa. The sofa's not coming with the house, but I think very often Claire will go in and she'll help declutter. Sometimes furniture's simply in the wrong places.
Yeah.
Entrance halls are a very, very interesting space because people are judging from the second they've knocked on the front door to the second the door opens. So Claire will literally, with a client, she'll stand outside their house and she'll work her way through and just make sure that everything kind of feels right.
Yeah, it's really important.
When you consider the psychology of buying and selling, about 85-90% of it is emotive. It's what we see.
Yeah.
So if everything's too busy, you've got to climb over stuff, people walk away and they just say the house didn't feel right. They don't necessarily know that it was just because it's got too much.
Yeah. It's quite irrational, basically.
Yeah,
I mean, very irrational, but
so I valued a house that's been on the market recently and they've got the most beautiful annex. It's a stone building.
Yeah.
But they have a lot of items in there that you would normally associate maybe putting in a garage.
Yeah.
And I had to have the sticky conversation with the seller because I said, look, for me to do my job properly, I need to be honest. So can I have your consent to be frank and honest? And they looked at me and they said yes. And I said, the way you're presenting this at the moment, it looks like the most beautiful storeroom I have ever seen. And
Brilliant.
they looked at me a little bit confused and I said, look, joking aside, if you were to stage this room, it would potentially feel like the £150,000 space it is, but at the moment it's feeling like the most beautiful storage room I've ever seen.
Wow, it's quite a hard thing to deliver.
It's very hard because this particular couple, they maybe have a different view, but my job is not to be nice. My job is to be kind and give people the best possible advice because by doing so, it will benefit them longer term.
Yeah, those difficult conversations, I'm assuming you can have those at lots of different parts of the process.
Yeah.
And also being able to, I assume having individuals that can take that feedback on board is pretty important as well, right? Because I thought it could get harder down the line.
Absolutely.
So it's quite important you've got that open dialogue straight away. So in that example, did they make the changes?
They are making the changes.
Oh, right, okay. Interesting. Because it's quite I think, you're right, you're not selling your vision, you're trying to sell someone else's ideas, I suppose.
Yeah.
Is there anything else like that comes to mind that over the years that you've seen that are big sort of no-nos or things that you try and change when you get to a house?
Very loud colours can be very off-putting because they're very charismatic and they're individual to the owner, which are amazing. Yeah. But buyers kind of often just need to see a softer palette. And also the lighter colours can make the rooms feel bigger. Yeah. The beautiful claret red dining rooms that we maybe saw 10, 15 years ago, they're very dramatic and great for dinner party, but when you're trying to sell the house, it makes the room feel smaller. Yeah,
exactly. So you suppose you're making a decision, aren't you, when you're living in a house? It's like you're putting your own stamp on it.
Absolutely.
But there's this kind of, you might end up devaluing it slightly or making it harder to sell, but there's that challenge, isn't it? You've just got to go through that process yourself and understand what you want to do when you're living there, sort of thing. Yeah. Gardens, we didn't talk about swimming pools. Where do they come in?
Swimming pools are very, very personal. We don't really have the climate to make the most of swimming pools.
Yeah.
In my experience, very often swimming pools, they do become a bit of a challenge when selling a property because you've got to have that sweet spot of the children being old enough that they're safe to swim.
Yeah.
But you've got to be able to use that swimming pool on a very regular basis because otherwise the cost per swim becomes very, very expensive.
Yeah, I was going to say, if you add it up over the year, it's insane, right? But I assume it's just again about finding the right buyer that's always wanted a swimming pool.
Yeah.
And they might not worry about that so much at that point. It depends.
Yeah, swimming pools can obviously have the telescopic covers on, so there are solutions to them, but then they don't look particularly nice.
Okay.
It also very much depends where the swimming pool is situated in the plot, because we've had clients where they've been very, very clever and they've sited the swimming pool just off to one side, so you've still got the beautiful view of the garden without it being interrupted by the swimming pool.
So we tend to do a lot of soft screening where we're almost creating rooms within the garden, and we tend to put swimming pools in a room, so they're sort of secluded, and that tends to work quite well if people are swimming anyway because they want to be secluded from neighbours or whatever. So we come across that quite a lot actually as a thing. So cost of heating pools and general energy costs rising. How are buyers interested in sustainable buildings where they've got solar? Is that a thing, and is it more of a thing?
Yeah, it's becoming more and more of not only a sort of a cultural thing, but people are just very practical. We sold a lovely property in Wisborough Green last year, and it was owned by a local electrician, and we had one of the highest energy rated properties possible. In fact, Rightmove picked it up in their top 5 eco homes.
Really? Amazing.
But it's just an example of what can be done. More and more people are putting in air source heat pumps.
Yes.
A lot of people want to put solar in because, again, more people are driving electric cars. So they want their properties to have a function within their ownership, and also they want their properties generating income as well.
I was about to say, I mean, you're essentially selling something that also is really quite an attractive thing to buy that.
Of course it is.
We were very lucky. Horsham District Council helped partially fund solar panels here with our last year. So 80%, all of the lights on today, everything filming, it's all on solar. So, well, maybe not today with the rain, but it's been brilliant. And we've, as a business, that's been a massive thing. We've now installed a car charging point for our vehicles. So I think it is definitely more where we want to go, right?
Absolutely.
It's good from a buying point of view. Cool. Last question then, talking about where the future of your business. How's tech and AI? It's been banded around all the time. Do you use it?
Yep.
And yes, you do. Cool.
Yep.
In what ways, and how's it helping?
AI can very much contribute to solutions for us because, again, we know a lot of the conveyancing process, but sometimes we can use AI to gather a lot of information together and help contribute towards solutions. It's helping us communicate a lot better with our clients and customers as well. Yeah,
it's cool. It's one of those things where there's a lot of, especially in our industry, there's quite a lot of negativity towards it. And I understand that from an environmental perspective, and we need to work on that. But we, as a team, certainly our design team, are using it quite a lot for allowing customers to visualise our designs. And we're using our experience, our knowledge of plants, which is our specialist skill, and it's just transformed that process. And we're seeing a significant uplift in our design because of it. So I'm hoping that they can fix the environmental bit, and and we'll carry on using it in a good way. So it's good to hear. Alex, thanks so much for coming in. That's brilliant. Thanks for joining us. You can follow us through our Spotify and YouTube, and of course through Instagram, which you're probably looking at now. Thanks again.
The Plant Hunter Guy podcast.